In the quiet, tree-lined streets of Willow Creek Estates, Mr. Harrison Langley ruled with an iron fist. A wealthy businessman in his late 50s, he was known for his polished suits and cold demeanor. To him, the neighborhood wasn't just a place to live. It was a symbol of perfection, where everything had to be flawless. As head of the Homeowners Association HOA, he enforced strict rules about lawn lengths, house colors, and even the types of cars parked in driveways. One sunny afternoon, a moving truck pulled up to the house next door. Out stepped Maya Thompson, a young architect with warm brown skin and a bright smile. She waved at Harrison as she introduced herself, but his response was icy. He barely nodded before walking away. Over the next few days, small complaints began surfacing. Her mailbox was too colorful, her garden flowers didn't match the neighborhood theme. Other neighbors noticed his disapproval, but said nothing. Maya tried not to let it bother her. She focused on settling in, decorating her new home with care. But every time she passed Harrison, his piercing glare made one thing clear: he didn't want her there. Still, Maya refused to let his attitude dim her spirit. Little did he know, this would only set the stage for what was coming next. As weeks passed, Harrison's behavior toward Maya grew more obvious. He began attending HOA meetings with a folder full of concerns about her property. At one meeting, he pointed out that her curtains were visible from the street, a violation of the community's aesthetic guidelines. Another neighbor timidly suggested it wasn't a big deal, but Harrison silenced them with a sharp glare. His message was clear: Maya didn't belong. Maya, however, wasn't easily intimidated. She attended the next HOA meeting herself, armed with research and polite determination. When Harrison accused her of breaking rules, she calmly explained how her choices aligned with the guidelines. Her confidence surprised everyone, including Harrison, who clenched his jaw but said nothing. Outside of the meetings, Maya continued to shine. She started planting vibrant flowers in her garden, roses, sunflowers, and daisies that caught the attention of other neighbors. Children loved visiting her yard to admire the blooms. Slowly, some residents began warming up to her, even inviting her for coffee or chatting over the fence. This infuriated Harrison, who saw her growing popularity as a personal affront. One evening, while taking out the trash, Maya noticed a note tucked under her doormat. It read, "You don't fit here. Leave." Though shaken, Maya refused to let fear take hold. Instead, an idea sparked in her mind. If Harrison wanted to play games, she'd show him what true strength looked like, not through anger, but through kindness and resilience. Unbeknownst to him, this quiet battle was just beginning. The anonymous note only strengthened Maya's resolve. Rather than letting it push her away, she decided to lean into the challenge. She began hosting small gatherings in her backyard, barbecues, book clubs, and even gardening workshops. Her warm personality drew people in, and soon her home became a hub of activity. Neighbors who had once avoided her now found themselves looking forward to her invitations. Harrison watched all of this from his window, seething with frustration. He couldn't understand why others were gravitating toward her. To him, Maya represented everything he disliked, someone different from the norm he had worked so hard to maintain. Determined to regain control, he doubled down on his complaints, nitpicking every detail about her property. When her garden lights stayed on past midnight one evening, he filed a formal complaint with the HOA, but Maya handled it gracefully. At the next meeting, she apologized for the oversight and turned the situation into an opportunity. She proposed organizing a community event, a nighttime garden tour where neighbors could showcase their yards. The idea was met with enthusiasm, leaving Harrison isolated in his disapproval. For the first time, cracks began to show in his carefully constructed image of authority. Meanwhile, Maya noticed something interesting. Mrs. Carter, an elderly neighbor often seen chatting with Harrison, started visiting Maya more frequently. One day, over tea, Mrs. Carter admitted, "You're changing things around here, dear, in a good way." Though Maya smiled politely, she knew this was just the beginning. Harrison's rigid world was slowly unraveling, whether he realized it or not. The night of the community garden tour arrived, and the neighborhood buzzed with excitement. Colorful lanterns illuminated pathways, soft music played in the background, and laughter filled the air as neighbors strolled from yard to yard, admiring each other's creativity. Maya's garden was the highlight of the event. Her vibrant flowers, twinkling fairy lights, and cozy seating areas drew crowds. Even those who hadn't spoken to her before couldn't help but compliment her work. Harrison stayed away at first, pacing inside his house, irritated by the noise and laughter drifting through his windows. But curiosity eventually got the better of him. Peering out, he saw groups of people gathered at Maya's home, their faces glowing with joy. Reluctantly, he stepped outside, intending to criticize the gathering for being too loud or disorderly. However, when he entered Maya's yard, something unexpected happened. A young boy tugged on Harrison's sleeve, asking if he wanted to see the magic flower corner Maya had created. Before Harrison could refuse, the child led him to a cluster of glowing solar-powered lights surrounding exotic plants. For a moment, Harrison stood silently, taken aback by the beauty of it all. Then, Mrs. Carter approached, handing him a cup of hot cocoa. "Isn't this lovely?" she said warmly. Harrison mumbled an awkward response but didn't leave. As the evening went on, Maya noticed Harrison lingering near the edges of the crowd. Though he still wore his usual scowl, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. It was clear that the walls he'd built around himself were beginning to crack. Maya smiled to herself, knowing this was just the start of a much bigger change. Harrison wasn't ready to admit it yet, but the seeds of transformation had been planted. In the days following the garden tour, something unusual happened. Harrison found himself thinking about Maya more often than he cared to admit. Her kindness during the event had thrown him off balance. Despite his harsh words and constant complaints, she had never retaliated or shown anger. Instead, she extended warmth even to him, offering a polite nod whenever their paths crossed. It confused him, leaving cracks in the rigid worldview he'd held for so long. One morning, as Harrison walked to his car, he noticed Maya struggling with a heavy bag of soil outside her garage. She was trying to lift it into her car trunk, but seemed to be having difficulty. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure of what to do. Then, almost instinctively, he stepped forward and offered to help. Surprised but grateful, Maya accepted, thanking him with a genuine smile. The brief interaction left both of them feeling uneasy, yet strangely connected. Later that day, Harrison caught himself wondering why she hadn't treated him with the same disdain he showed her. He realized how easy it would have been for her to ignore him or hold a grudge. Yet she chose kindness instead, a concept foreign to him. That evening, unable to shake off his thoughts, Harrison decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. As he passed Maya's house, he saw her sitting on her porch, sketching designs for what looked like a new project. Something about the scene struck him, a quiet determination paired with creativity. For the first time, he felt a pang of admiration, though he quickly pushed it aside. Still, the seed of doubt planted in his mind continued to grow. Maybe there was more to Maya than he had allowed himself to see. Over the next few weeks, Harrison found himself observing Maya more closely. At first, it was unintentional. He'd glance at her house while driving by or notice her chatting with neighbors during evening walks. But soon, he began seeking opportunities to learn more about her. He saw how she helped Mrs. Carter carry groceries inside, offered gardening tips to a young couple struggling with their lawn, and spent hours volunteering at the local community center. Each act of kindness chipped away at his hardened exterior. One Saturday morning, Harrison attended an HOA meeting where Maya presented a proposal for a neighborhood cleanup day. She suggested organizing volunteers to beautify common areas, plant trees, and repaint park benches. Most attendees loved the idea, eagerly signing up to participate. Even Harrison, who usually dismissed such initiatives as unnecessary, felt compelled to join, not because he cared about the project, but because he wanted to understand what drove Maya to give so much of herself. On cleanup day, Harrison arrived, late, wearing pressed slacks and holding a clipboard, ready to critique every detail. But as he watched Maya lead the group with energy and enthusiasm, something shifted within him. She didn't bark orders or demand perfection. Instead, she laughed with children painting flower pots, thanked tired volunteers, and shared snacks with everyone. Her actions weren't performative. They came from a place of genuine care. For the first time in years, Harrison picked up a paintbrush and joined in. As he worked alongside others, including Maya, he experienced a sense of camaraderie he hadn't felt in decades. By the end of the day, sweat on his brow and dirt on his hands, he realized how wrong he had been. The very things he once criticized, her warmth, resilience, and openness, were qualities that brought people together. That night, sitting alone in his study, Harrison reflected on his behavior. For years, he had judged others based on superficial standards, blind to the richness of diversity and connection. Maya's presence in the neighborhood wasn't a threat. It was a gift. Though he still struggled to fully confront his biases, one truth became undeniable. She had changed him in ways he couldn't ignore. The following weeks brought a noticeable change in Harrison. Though he was still reserved by nature, his interactions with Maya and the neighbors softened. At an HOA meeting, he surprised everyone by publicly praising Maya's efforts during the cleanup day. "She reminded us what it means to work together," he said hesitantly, avoiding eye contact but speaking sincerely. The room fell silent for a moment before breaking into applause. Maya smiled warmly at him from across the table, her eyes reflecting gratitude rather than triumph. Encouraged by this small step, Harrison began making other changes. He stopped filing petty complaints about minor infractions and even supported Maya's proposal to install a community garden, a project she had dreamed of since moving in. Slowly, his rigid rules gave way to collaboration, and the neighborhood started feeling less like a fortress and more like a home. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Harrison knocked on Maya's door. When she opened it, she looked surprised but welcomed him inside. Sitting in her cozy living room, surrounded by sketches and books, they shared their first real conversation. Harrison admitted his past behavior, acknowledging how wrong he had been. "You could have hated me," he said quietly. "But you didn't." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Hatred doesn't fix anything," she replied. "Sometimes people just need a chance to see things differently." Harrison left that night with a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Over time, he became an ally, working alongside Maya to foster unity in the community. Neighbors noticed the transformation, not just in him, but in the entire atmosphere of Willow Creek Estates. What had once been divided by prejudice now stood united through kindness and understanding. In the end, Maya taught Harrison far more than tolerance. She showed him the power of compassion. And in doing so, she proved that no heart is beyond change, if only we're willing to open it.